The only revenue that we make as a firm is providing advice to our clients. They're paying us for advice. There's no other source or stream of revenue. And I think you're going to see more and more clients gravitate to that business model because it's inherently unconflicted. We are not conflicted in the advice that we give clients. We do whatever is in their best interest, and our business model mandates that that be the case.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Connected Advisor. I'm your host, Kyle Van Pelt, co-founder and CEO of Milemarker. And today I have a treat for everybody. Today we have Thomas Carroll. Thomas is the CEO and president of Homrich Berg, a firm I'm very familiar with as he is a fellow Atlanta resident. And he's just right down the road from me as we record this episode. He's done great things in the city of Atlanta. They've built a really long-standing firm and special firm. So I'm excited to have Thomas on the show today. Thanks so much for being with us.
Kyle, thanks for having me. Excited to be with you today and look forward to the discussion. Glad to always speak to a fellow Atlantan.
Likewise. All right. So Thomas, I start every one of these episodes the same way. And this one isn't going to be any different. So I have found in doing hundreds of conversations, maybe thousands of them now, that everybody has a unique path to this industry. Some might be traditional. Maybe they follow in a family member's footsteps or maybe, something like that. Some people might sneak in through the side door. They're doing something completely different. They stumble into this industry in some other sort of way. But what I've found is whether they have a traditional path or a non-traditional path, everybody has what we call a money moment. And that's a moment in their life, talking to somebody, reading something, doing something, where that light bulb clicks and they go, this is what I want to do for my career. This is how I want to serve people. So Thomas, for you, what was that money moment that brought you to the wealth management space?
Well, Kyle, I wish I could give you some big aha, moment that said, this is what I want to do. This is my calling. But honestly, it started because I wanted a job out of college. I started in financial services industry as a 22-year-old kid. I graduated from Wake Forest University in North Carolina, and I knew I wanted to get back to Atlanta. I'm as you said, a local Atlantan, born and raised in Atlanta, and I love this city. And so I wanted to get back, and I wanted to work for the hometown bank, and that was SunTrust Bank. So I started in a basic training program that allowed me to kind of see all different facets of the banking world. And what really I gravitated to in those early days was the private banking side of the business. Mm-hmm. And I just loved the relationships and the connectivity that you build as an advisor with families. And so I thought that was going to be a good path for me that I could kind of leverage some of my Atlanta relationships in building out a business. And so that's kind of how I got into private banking. It was called private banking then, and ultimately now wealth management. But, I started the process by wanting to get a job. And then I ended up at SunTrust for 23 years. Oh. And the entirety of my time there was in wealth management. So I had a wonderful, great 23-year career at starting off as an advisor and then moving into a bunch of different, leadership positions across the way. But that's kind of how I got into this industry. And I couldn't be happier to have found my way to this industry because it's such a great industry and so rewarding in the work that we do for our clients.
That's awesome. I actually really love that story because, maybe some people have some sort of crazy light bulb moment. I almost kind of love that you were like, hey, this is just something I wanted to do. And then you actually loved it. It's not that many people who come and study what it is or come and work in what they studied and actually stick with it.
And look, that was a 22-year-old kid and I just turned 50 this year. So I've turned this business. It's the only industry I worked in my entire career. And
incredible.
I was going to stick with something for 28 years. You got to like what you're doing. And I certainly love this industry.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about SunTrust Truist. So again, kind of an Atlanta, home baked and homebred place. And I think is actually kind of a very under the radar, sneaky, successful bank and business. Obviously, you hear about all the big ones and everything, but a lot of those who live here in Atlanta know about the prowess of SunTrust. But I'd love to hear you talk about that. You spend so much time there. I mean, but compared to the JP Morgans and the big banks like that, I think SunTrust has quite the presence here in the work that they do. What do you think made them so successful?
Well, look, I go back to what I said earlier that I wanted to work for the hometown bank. I personally took a lot of pride in the connectivity between the bank and the city. And in those early days in my career, we kind of had this mantra that we wanted to own Atlanta. And that really resonated with me being a local kid. And SunTrust did an excellent job of investing in the community. I learned very on, if you build your community, you build your bank. And that was the way that SunTrust operated for my career there. And again, I had a lot of pride, and I like to say I stayed at SunTrust until the last paycheck that it issued. I just didn't go forward with Truist. So I was certainly loyal to SunTrust through the end of that time.
That's amazing. And we're going to talk about that because I think that's an interesting change. But, I have to note that, when they shifted from SunTrust to Truist, they moved out of Atlanta. They moved to, I think, Charlotte, right? Is that where they went?
That is where the headquarters are now. And look, as again, a hometown Atlanta guy, that was a tough thing for me. And, I wanted to stay in Atlanta and was happy to be able to find a firm that is an Atlanta-based firm. Yes. And I could continue my career here in Atlanta.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love it. It's like relocating a sports franchise, right? It's going to make a big change.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, okay, let's talk a little bit about the transition from SunTrust, not Truist, but from SunTrust to Homrich Berg. So from our research, you were a part of what's known as the 12-year succession plan that got put in place by Andy Berg. And so how did that come to be, right? So I'm sure you probably knew Andy. You're probably talking to him long in advance. I don't think you just sort of picked up the phone and said, hey, I'd like to come there. Tell us a little bit about this 12-year succession plan and how you became a part of it.
Yeah, it's a great story. And I'm glad you asked about it and did your research on that. So first of all, Andy Berg and I had known each other in Atlanta circles for a long time. And our kids went to the same high school. We attended the same church. So there were a lot of, and I had great respect for obviously this local A. And Andy had tried to recruit me off and on through the years to join HB, but there was never really a catalyst for me to make the move. And until the merger was announced between SunTrust and BB&T, and he reached out to me pretty quickly thereafter. He's like, is this our catalyst now, perhaps? And sure enough, it was. But the 12-year plan, look, it is such a great example of the work that we do as planners. We're a planning organization first. And so if you're going to facilitate a CEO, founder-led business in transition, and you might as well plan for that. And 12 years might be on the little bit longer side, but I have a great deal of respect for the thought that went into that. And the 12 years was kind of split into three different 4-year tranches. The first 4 years was let me find the successor. So a very thoughtful kind of process for that. The next 4 years would be let me work with the successor and kind of transitioning the responsibilities. And then the final 4 years would be where the successor takes the CEO role and as the founder, Andy moves to the chair role. And that's the current phase that we're in, but just couldn't be more grateful to be here and to be honestly, the first CEO of our firm, whose name's not on the door. It's quite an awesome responsibility to carry forward the legacy of David Homrich and Andy Berg. And we've really celebrated that a lot this month, in fact, because we just celebrated our 35th year in October. So we had an entire month of celebrating the 35-year successful history of our firm. So that's a little bit about the 12-year plan.
Congratulations on 35 years.
Yeah, thank you. It's very exciting, and we celebrated all month long. So it was a wonderful event.
That's fantastic. So I actually want to dive a little bit deeper. I love how you connected the 12-year succession plan to being a planning-focused firm. Yeah. But I think succession is just such a conversation at large in our industry right now. Lots of people trying to figure this out. And I think some people are a little behind the 8 ball in trying to figure it out. So, what would you say to the person who's listening to this, who is trying to figure out what succession planning would look like for their firm? I know a lot of people, maybe they just sort of chalk it up to, we're just going to sell the firm to one of these big consolidators and that's how we're going to do succession or something like that. But Andy obviously thought a lot of it. You are on the receiving end of, kind of helping with that succession plan. But how should RIAs in the industry right now, who might be approaching retirement age, might be thinking about that, how should they successfully plan for succession? That was tough.
Well, successfully plan for succession starts with planning. That's a key word. Like, this is not something, I don't think the best transitions occur when there is a very thoughtful, curated, multi-year plan. You just can't wake up one day and say, hey, it's now time that I've transitioned this business, and you do that 6 months later. That's really not good for all of your stakeholders, notwithstanding your clients who will feel an impact of that transition. So the thoughtful transition is really the way to do it. And one of the keys that I think Andy focused on really early on, and we believe very strongly in this, is kind of a foundational element of our firm, is a distributed equity model. So you want to hire, develop, train, promote, and ultimately equitize, younger partners. If you look at our firm today, we have 48 equity partners, and about a quarter of them started either as a summer intern in college or their first job right out of college. So, give Andy and our early kind of partners a lot of credit for equitizing younger partners. And so there's the equity succession plan, and then there's the leadership transition plan. So there's kind of two components of it. And, on the leadership transition side, again, give our board a lot of credit. When they started this process a number of years ago, they came to the conclusion that the leadership successor was not someone that was currently, in-house. They felt that it was a requirement to go out and find that person, i.e. me, from the external market and bring that in-house. So you've got kind of leadership succession and equity transition, both of which I think our firm has navigated very well. And in terms of the 12-year plan, just one more comment on that. I mentioned we're a planning firm, and I am a fee-paying client of our firm. So I get the client experience. I do that very intentionally because I want to know what our clients are receiving. And when we meet with our team, they model out our cash flow to age 100. And I'm like, probably not going to be around, but I appreciate the exercise of the long-term cash flow planning that is paramount to, I think, the financial success of our clients is really starting with the budget and that cash flow modeling. So we're doing this long-term forecasting and planning for our clients. So as an enterprise, it's great that we're able to take the same approach for long-term sustainability for our enterprise. And that's exactly what we did.
Yeah, well stated. So I actually want to talk a little bit more about, you had those two components there. I love the idea of equitizing younger partners to kind of keep succession happening operationally. But then you talked about the leadership transition. And I think this is something that's not talked about enough. And maybe on paper, it makes sense. Go find somebody who's going to take over the firm, announce that they're the person who's going to take over the firm, do what you're going to do. But there's an emotional component to that for a lot of people involved, right? You've got people who've been working for the founders for a long time. You've got all of this. And I think there's a lot of what ifs that come into that. I think there's a lot of stuff there. How much of a role do you think the longevity of the plan, a 12-year plan or something, kind of smooths out any of those emotional roller coasters? And what else would you speak to that emotional transition of leadership? Because I know people are probably going, what's going to happen? How is Thomas going to do things? Is he going to be different than these other guys? Is he going to change a lot? Is he going to uproot a lot? All of that type of stuff.
Yeah, look, that's a great question. The 12-year plan definitely helps. A well thought out plan is going to be positive on that. But look, the transition from a founder-led business is still challenging. So for me, one of the things I learned along the way is, you come into this firm and it's Andy Berg's firm. You need to be patient. You need to focus on things that in those early years in whatever way that you can add value. And then rather than this being this big kind of leadership revolution, let's make it a leadership evolution. And so over those 4 years, Andy and I, got along incredibly well, but I felt like I had to build my credibility. I had to earn my stripes a little bit. And it's much easier to do that over a 4-year period than over a 6-month period. And at the end of the 4 years, when we actually announced the transition, I had a number of folks, not necessarily inside the firm, but in the industry. So like, I thought y'all already done that. And that was exactly the reaction that we were hoping to get, is that when a leadership transition is done, it should be seamless. There should be no change and really no impact. And I think that's the plane that we landed, is that our clients and ultimately the market and our teammates all kind of felt that, the transition was done in a way that didn't create a lot of change.
Excellent. I love it. I love your thoughts on that. Okay. So I want to try and tie some of these things together. You coming from the bank world and the banking channel to now being in the independent RIA space, which Homrich Berg is. There's a lot of firms that are, still breaking away from the banking channel, or however you want to look at it, wirehouses, banking side. There's still just a ton of movement to the independent RIA space. What do you think is driving a lot of that movement, and where do you see Homrich Berg sitting in that space as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you're exactly right. I mean, you look at the industry statistics, and the amount of money that's moved from banks and broker dealers into the RIA channel is significant. That transition is occurring every year. And if you look at any sort of kind of, multi-year, decade kind of studies in the future, the RIA space is going to continue to take wallet share from the other channels in the wealth management industry. And I think there's a couple things. Number one, I think clients are getting more sophisticated in their buying decisions about who they want to be their advisors.
Oh, interesting.
And at least at HB, we're also a fee-only shop. And that's a nuance. There's obviously different ways that you can approach your RIA. There's these hybrid approaches and affiliated broker dealers inside of an RIA, but we're fee-only. So that is the only revenue that we make as a firm, is providing advice to our clients. They're paying us for advice. There's no other source or stream of revenue. And I think you're going to see more and more clients gravitate to that business model because it's inherently unconflicted. We are not conflicted in the advice that we give clients. We do whatever is in their best interest, and our business model mandates that be the case. So that's number one. And I think clients will continue to gravitate towards that. The other thing is I think that you'll continue to see advisors migrate from those other channels into the RIA channel just because of the entrepreneurship that it provides, the sorts of control, the equity. Like, we've had some success in bringing some talented advisors, and one of the key things that attracts them is the ability to receive equity and in an asset like our firm that is growing in its equity value. So, it's the ability to be an entrepreneur, the ability to serve clients in an unconflicted way. It's the ability to be a business owner and receive equity in the firm. All of those things will lead to advisors migrating. And I think clients will continue to migrate as well.
Well stated. Okay, so lots of things moving. I love the notion of clients are actually getting more sophisticated. I don't think people talk about that enough. I think everybody still likes to say that an advisor just sits across from a client and they kind of, just take everything at face value. But I do believe clients are more educated than ever about what it means to be a planner, to have a CFP, to, a bunch of that different stuff. So I think that's a good call out that I haven't heard a lot of people mention.
We have had, I can't even tell you how many clients or prospective clients that have done their own research online and have gone to our website, and in the contact us section of our website say, I've done my research and I am interested in being a client of your firm. And so we'll then call them once they submit that. And sure enough, they probably had interviewed or done research on 3 or 4 firms, and it's self-selected down to 2 or 3.
Interesting.
So, and I think these particular clients are looking for fee only. They're looking for financial planning, and they're not just looking for kind of, let me manage your assets.
Yeah. How much do you think that the size and scale contributes to a client like that, right? Because you all are, I think, as of this recording, just north of 15 billion. and I think I've heard you state that you'd like to be a regional consolidator, maybe not a national RIA. We could talk about that a little bit, but how much do you think it matters that clients are saying, maybe I don't want to be with a Morgan Stanley, that's a little big for me, but also I don't know if I want to be with the mom and pop RIA, but a $15 billion firm that's kind of in my neighborhood. Yeah, that seems pretty stable. That seems pretty good.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with it. And just to update your data, we're at 18.5 billion.
All right.
As of this morning. So
wow.
That's hot off the press.
What's 3 billion amongst friends? Right?
Yeah, well, I was going to let it go if it was $1 billion, but 3.5 billion, probably need to correct that. But look, I think you're hitting on it, Kyle. Folks have referred to our size as kind of the Goldilocks size, right? We're small enough where we can be nimble, entrepreneurial. We don't have a lot of layers inside of our organizations, but yet we're big enough where we have scale. We can invest in technology. We can provide sophisticated investment options for clients. And we actually have some buying power in the marketplace. So there are a lot of, investment options out there or sponsors that, very much want to be on the Homrich Berg platform. And, at some of the larger national banks, they have to have this massive amount of capacity. So these really good investment managers can't get on those platforms. And so, you find some really great managers that we can access at our size that you can't access if you're at, 2 billion, 3 billion or whatever. Maybe.
Yeah, well stated. Okay, so now I've got to ask you about that though. So you mentioned the Goldilocks stage. I think that's right. How big is the range of Goldilocks? Because what I want to ask you about is you all just brought on this capital partner in TPG. You just made a couple of acquisitions, it looks like. You're starting to expand into, again, the phrase of a regional consolidator. Maybe you don't want to go buy anything and everything out there, but you're kind of picking your spots. Obviously, you're going to keep growing. But how does that Goldilocks phase, fit in with, hey, we just took on some capital. We're going to start bringing some people under our really great umbrella here.
There's a ton of runway in that Goldilocks phase. I mean, we're still just 223 employees. Like it is not that we're so big and so monolithic. I mean, like as this last month underscored the vibrant, fun culture that we had as we celebrated our 35th anniversary with a month long of just one event after another and celebrating. So the culture of our firm is healthy and we've got a long runway before I have any concern about that whatsoever. And then there's the client side. I remind our team every day that we're here to provide a comprehensive fiduciary wealth management experience in a fee-only way on a chassis of service, not a chassis of sales. And if we can continue to keep that as our North Star, then the client's going to have no impact in their experience. And growing just presents more opportunities for them to receive even better services and experience. In fact, we had an client advisory board meeting not too long ago, and we were talking about some of our growth. And one of our larger clients is a key member of our advisory board, says, look, over the last 3 years, my experience has gotten better. So you've invested more in technology. You've added these estate planning resources that, my family didn't have access to. And so growth allows for you to invest in the business that improves the client outcome. And that's one of the benefits of scale, in my opinion.
Yeah, well stated. Well stated. No, people should not be afraid of scale is kind of what I think I'm hearing. Because there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there who I think get afraid of maybe things, trying to pick my words carefully here, but getting away from them, right? If I have to go hire hundreds of people or whatever, things start to get away from me. But it sounds like there's a lot of benefits to scale if you go down that path.
Yeah, look, scale, like we have a vision statement, and one of the pieces of our vision statement is to seek scale so that we can invest in technology and enhance the services that we're delivering to our clients. That's why we do scale. We're talking to a reasonably large firm that's interested in joining HB. And, one of the reasons why they are interested in joining HB is because of some of the investments we've been able to make in technology that even at their size, they can't afford to make. And this is all about improving the client experience and also making things more efficient for our advisors and, having more technology on their desktop.
I love it. Okay, you've mentioned this a couple times. Milemarker is a technology company. This is near and dear to my heart. You've mentioned how you've used your scale to invest in technology to create a better client experience, to be appealing to advisors. I love the story about the family that works with you saying, hey, my experience has gotten better. But what are some of those investments in technology you're referring to that you think have actually moved the needle? Because I have conversations over and over again here, Thomas, where people are buying more tech and it doesn't feel like it moves the needle, right? More tech isn't always the answer. It's the right tech and applied in the right way. So talk to me about some of those investments you've made. What are the ones that are actually working and paying off?
Well, look, it's on the client side and it's on the teammate side, and both are important. For example, on the teammate side, we didn't have something as basic as a HR system a number of years ago. So now we have a dynamic HR system, and all of our HR process and everything kind of runs through that. We spent an inordinate amount of time when I first got to the firm investing in a CRM. So we dramatically upgraded our CRM, and now all of our work, now we're building in Power Apps and Power BI into CRM workflows that makes life so much easier for an advisor and their ops team here at our firm. So the advisor's experience has gotten better. And then on the client side, investing in some tax softwares that enhance tax reporting. Everyone's, kind of frustrated, in K1s and delayed tax filings and all that. And we've invested in some things that certainly streamline that, from the client experience. And for those clients that are investing in our private alternatives, they can go to a dashboard through this new tech interface and be able to see their upcoming capital calls. And it's all right there on a client dashboard for them. So things like that, we digitize our subscription process. I mean, the private alternative subscription document process was very cumbersome and not a wonderful client experience. And so we invested in some technology that's improved that. We've got a portfolio management system that clients love that allows for them to have a mobile interface with our firm. So all of those things, I think, have led to a real positive experience from our clients and been worth the investment that we've made.
Excellent. I love it. It's great to hear that. What I also hear you saying, though, that is unique to me is a lot of that investment seemed to happen in what I call the core 4 pieces of technology, right? So I think every great RIA has 4 core pieces. It's their portfolio management, their CRM, their planning, and then their custodial relationships. Obviously, you've got some satellite stuff that's always going to be helpful, but it seems like where you've gotten the most bang for your buck was actually investing in a lot of those core 4 pieces of technology and getting the most out of them. So many people keep throwing dollar after dollar at these point solution, incremental solutions on the side that they're hoping are going to make those core 4 better. But a lot of times it's like, hey, just roll up your sleeves and do the work in those core pieces that everybody's using every single day to make those better.
And that's exactly right. And, we've invested in those core 4, as you said. I mean, the portfolio management system was already in place when I got here. We didn't make any changes on that, but certainly the CRM has become a real critical leverage point for our enterprise. You mentioned earlier that we're a regional integrator. So we're not trying to, our goal was to not get bigger for bigger's sake. Our goal was to, continue to deliver the client experience we want to deliver in a fee-only construct with a service-oriented approach. But when we do find a deal to be done, it's going to be in an integrated way, not an aggregated way. And one of the keys to that is one tech stack. So we're not going to go out and sponsor a bunch of kind of one-off tech platforms. And that is not good for building sustainable scale and a consistent client experience and an advisor experience. So that's a tenet to our integrated philosophy is we're going to operate with a single tech stack.
I love it. I have actually become increasingly convinced that the firms scaling the fastest and the most successful have made that same decision. I think open architecture is kind of a siren song for thinking you can grow faster, and you might be able to grow faster by way of recruiting people or acquiring people, but man, you're going to put so much drag operationally on the firm and experientially. I'm not surprised to hear you say that.
This podcast is brought to you by Turncast. We make game-changing content for fintech and financial services companies. Learn more at turncast.com.
All right. We've been talking about technology a little bit. I want to kind of zoom out now. I've loved talking about HB and what you're doing, but I'm going to ask you to get out your crystal ball, Thomas, and talk to me a little bit about some macro trends that you see happening in the industry. There's no shortage of things. I mean, I feel like our industry is changing maybe hourly in some ways of things that are going on here. But from where you sit and you're trying to position this firm to continue scaling as a regional integrator and consolidator, what are you looking at down the road that you are trying to keep your finger on the pulse of and that you see happening as a monumental shift for your firm?
Yeah. Well, so a couple of things. We already touched on one, and so I'll just go back and kind of, but it's a very much a trend that is going to occur, and that's this migration inside the wealth management industry from one channel of the wealth management industry to the other. And I think that independent RIA space is going to be the net winner, over the next decade, if I had a crystal ball. So next, I think it's important to mention service expansion. Like, it has been talked about, I've heard at industry conferences and other things, and I think it's completely legitimate. I think these more informed clients are going to expect that their advisor provide them more services. From being kind of an investment manager, when I got into business, that was kind of what you were. You're advising on investment assets and managing, financial assets, to being a more comprehensive financial planner, to maybe in the future, you're an integrated, life and wealth coach. So you got to be thinking about your platform much more comprehensively. How can you deliver more services to clients without potentially adding a lot of cost to the client? So this is where scale, again, comes into play. So I think that's another trend is I think the scaled platforms are going to be able to make those investments in incremental services to meet client demand over the next decade, which is one of the benefits of the set of scale. So that's another trend I see. And last, this is maybe not being talked enough about in various industry circles that I go to, is I think we're about to become a much more regulated industry. I think that RIAs need to prepare for enhanced regulation. With banks and brokerage clients moving to the channel, and those channels are regulated by FINRA and the Federal Reserve, the SEC, I think, is going to enhance its regulation. We're starting to already see it. Look, there's a proposed regulation that would bring AML oversight to independent RIAs in the next year. And it basically taking a bank AML reg and bringing it to the RIAs. What that's going to do is that's going to increase the cost inside of RIAs. That's likely going to make it even more difficult for smaller RIAs to invest in having an AML compliance officer on staff. So anyway, I see a trend where firms that are thinking about their risk organization more comprehensively are going to be better prepared in the future.
Well stated. I feel like we could do a whole podcast episode on that last comment probably. So maybe we'll have to have you back on and we'll just talk about, what regulation may look like. Because I think that's an interesting point. I mean, I think that's been one of the things that is so attractive about RIAs is that you're only regulated by the SEC. You don't have, both FINRA and SEC oversight, all of that type of stuff, obviously because of the business model. But, surely it's like that has to evolve as well as everything else evolves.
I think most RIAs, and appropriately, I think so, think about their risk in a compliance vertical. We've brought in a chief risk officer that thinks about risk on a much broader scale, of which compliance is one of the elements that we have to focus on. But we have a much more enterprise approach to risk management, which I think will bode well over the next number of years.
Excellent. Awesome. All right. So we are going to move into the final segment of the show. It's what we call the Milemarker Minute. It's a series of lightning round questions to just kind of get to know you a little bit better outside of the business side of things. So you ready for the Milemarker Minute?
Let's do it.
All right. Excellent. So I've traveled all over. I'm sure you have too. What is it that makes Atlanta still an underrated major metro in the United States of America?
Well, look, it's thriving business community, arts, sports, diversity, hospitality. People are actually nice here. So, all of that comes together just to create this, wonderful climate for families to live and for businesses to be successful. That's why I've been here for 50 years. So I love this city and can't imagine living anywhere else.
I love it. If you could travel one place in the world you've never been to before, where would you go?
That is a good question. One place in the world I've never been to is probably Japan. I've never been to Asia and would certainly like to experience that culture. I've heard a lot of people that have gone over there and have raved about it. So have to put that one on the list.
Okay. Are you a beach person or a mountains person?
Good question. Grew up probably being more of a beach person. Parents have a place down on the Florida beach, and my wife grew up in Melbourne, Florida on the beach. I think as I get older, I'm gravitating to more of a mountain person. Love going up to the mountains in the summer where it's, from Atlanta here, you can get to the mountains in a couple of hours and it's 10 to 15 degrees cooler when you get up there.
Yeah, you get a break from that Atlanta summer heat.
Exactly.
All right, if you had to pick one, the Atlanta Braves, the Atlanta Falcons, the Atlanta Hawks, or Atlanta United, who are you picking?
I mean, you're like, I have 3 kids. You're just like asking me to choose which of my 3 kids I love. I love them all equally. So look, I'm a diehard fan in all of those. I've had season tickets to all of them. But if you put me on the spot, the Falcons winning a Super Bowl would be the top. And I was in the stadium.
Oh no!
I was there.
28-3.
So that to me would be the top if we can ever win the Super Bowl.
Hey, Kirk Cousins has turned it around. Big difference this year.
6-3, looking good.
It does look good. Okay, my last question. You've been in financial services, wealth management your entire career. In an alternate universe, Thomas Carroll does not work in financial services or wealth management. What career do you think you would be doing in an alternate universe?
Well, if this is an alternate universe, which means it's not based in reality, I love the game of basketball. And I would love to have been able to do something in the basketball world. Probably was never going to make it to the NBA, but I love to coach. I coach my kids all the way through as they were playing youth basketball, and I still support our high school here in Atlanta. My kids are involved in the high school. So something in the game of basketball would have been something that I would have really enjoyed doing as the alternate career.
Excellent. Thomas, you made it through the Milemarker Minute. I have really thoroughly enjoyed this conversation with you. I think it was dripping with insights. It was fun to speak to a fellow Atlanta resident and native. And I would love to have you back on at some point. I really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for coming on today.
Well, thanks, Kyle, for having me, and really appreciate all you're doing for our industry in this podcast series. And happy to be on, happy to be your guest, and would love to come back at some point in the future.
Excellent. Okay, everybody, that has been another episode of The Connected Advisor. Please make sure you click like or follow or subscribe wherever you're listening to this. And if you'd be kind enough to leave a review, that would really help us so that other people can find great conversations like the one that you're listening to right now. But until next time, enjoy every mile.